afternoon, and thank you again for tuning in to the Raymond Hall Show. I am your host, Raymond Hall, and we are in for one incredible show today. I have two distinguished guests with me. They have been serving this nation and the community we just made a comment about it. There's over 100 years of service in this room between the three of us, and I'm going to step aside for these two young men because they have doubled my service. Today we have with us Mr. Dave Culmer and Mr. Bob Rosebrock, and they have quite a legacy of service. So we're going to be talking to them about the things that they are doing to help veterans, and they themselves are veterans. We want to do something that we always do, but with this show, we're going to put it right out there up front. It's the service of those who are serving in foreign places around the nation. They depend on one thing. They depend on the knowledge that with their service, it puts all of us at liberty to be able to give service. That's the one thing that we can all agree on, that we can count on, that our service makes sense because it gives others the liberty to serve. Now, it's a personal thing where you decide where you want to live, how you want to live, what you want to do with your life. That's a personal choice. But know that it comes at the cost of service of others. So today we're really going to hear boots on the ground, right on the ground, what that means, what that service on the ground means. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Raymond.
Okay. And we have someone who has given not only a career in the military, but they've Mr. Culmer has also given equally as many years in helping veterans with benefits and claims and learning how to live a life, because sometimes it's difficult when you come home and people say you have benefits, but you don't know how to get to them, okay? And then once you learn how to get to them, it's all kinds of challenges and everything to know exactly what to do next, okay? Then there's a unique thing. What happens when someone gives service? We have Bob with us, and he's in a unique position. Someone gave service some time ago with us in mind. And even though that service was given, and that service was given with us in mind, here today, that too is being challenged. So, again, I want to say welcome. We're going to take a really quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be here with Dave, and we're going to be here with Bob. I want to thank Morris Media Studios. I want to thank the engineer and the owners, my mentor, Mr. Johnny Morris, and I want to thank all of those persons that are serving. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be back with Dave and Bob. This is the Raymond Hall Show. And we are back. We definitely want to give our prayers out to Mr. Johnny Morris, and we wish him all of the prayers of recovery and health and everything else. We're here with Mr. Dave Culmer. Mr. Culmer was in the Marine Corps for 20 years, so hoorah. He's a much better man than I. Lasted 3, and that was it. I was done. Stick a fork in me. Okay. And after that, he worked for the VA for 22 years, and he worked in benefits and services as a counselor, 14 years, as service director of the Los Angeles County Council of the County Council of the American Legion. He's a member of the American Legion Post 46 there in Culver City. And for the last 5 years, he's been assisting veterans at large with their VA claims and processing. That's quite a bit.
Nothing for a stepper.
Okay, all right. So Bob is director of Old Veterans Guard for the past 10 years, and every Sunday there's a rally from 1 to 4 p.m. Okay. And it addresses and protests the VA's misuse of veterans' land and the abuse of war-injured and impoverished homeless veterans. Save our veterans' land and bring our homeless veterans home is their banner and their rallying cry. Where do you all have the rally at every Sunday from 1 to 4?
It's at the corner of Wilshire Boulevard and San Vicente Boulevard. It's at the northeast corner, right outside the VA. There's a plaza right there, and there's an open gate, and we on the corner. We've started out kind of strong 10 years ago, but it's the group's dwindled. We've lost many of our senior veterans, many in their 80s. We recently lost our most senior. He was 97.
Wow.
And but just a bunch of old veterans ago and stand up for. It's not so much protest. It's kind of a double-edged sword. We're standing up for our homeless veterans because that's we become the voice. They don't have one. And we then protest against the VA's misuse of the land and abuse of our homeless veterans.
Well, now talk to us about that in detail, because most of the audience know here on this show is about service. We don't sell anything. We don't, promote any particular agenda. Our agenda is that this nation is built on service, and service has come through every community. So you have to look at the fact that if you want to continue to have a democracy and a viable nation, we've got to give service. So that's what we do here. We talk about service. Now, what you spoke about was so very vital, because over the years, I mean, when I first got sick and I waited 6 years in and out of that hospital, and that remained a conversation. Talk to us about the history of that land there in West L.A.
What's interesting, after the Civil War, the years after, some 25 years after, many of the those who served, particularly in the North, it was cold, rough climate, and the guys were getting older, and they were looking for some land in warmer climate, and at that time they couldn't go in the South. It would have probably re-triggered the war again.
Right.
So they sought to find land out here in Los Angeles.
On the West Coast.
Yeah, in Southern California. So two families owned the vast amount of land from Santa Monica almost to downtown L.A., And what was interesting on it was that it was just ranch farmland. It wasn't worth much money, but they donated over 600 acres.
Wow.
And then over the years, the Wilshire Boulevard came through it, and then the 405 freeway, Sepulveda Boulevard and all. But when they originally built the home in the 1890s is when they started the construction, was that beautiful. It was these magnificent Victorian-style resident halls and dining halls and gardens. They had the library. They had,
I remember seeing pictures.
Yeah, it was like a city of
right.
its own. Right. And the camaraderie was outstanding. The Grand Army of the Republic, they ran it almost like a military post, and it was very successful. And then as they passed on, the VA came into existence in 1930 and kind of changed everything. They tore down all those buildings and put up, because that came in after World War I, and they put up these kind of Mediterranean-style architecture, which is nice, but when you look at it closely, they're real small windows. They got bars on them. It was like an asylum, not a home anymore. And UCLA, which is close by, they ended up, through their medical thing, experimenting from lobotomies and electric shock and whatnot. So it went through some bad times, good times, bad times, and we're trying to revive that.
But at all times, the land was deeded to stay focused on being a benefit to care for veterans.
Right. Yeah, in the deed itself, there was an act of Congress in 1887 that preceded the deed. They had to have an act of Congress to say what that deed was going to be. And in the deed itself, in 1888, it states 5 times to be permanently maintained as a national home for disabled soldiers.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I mean, a small child can read that statement and know what it means.
Well, that's why we are here talking about it today. We're talking about veterans services and benefits and everything. And sometimes you have resources that are not being used as intended. Now, I'm not saying why they're not being used as intended, but we do know that some of the decisions that have been made for that land has not benefited veterans.
Exactly right.
Yeah, it's been more of a commerce thing and that kind of thing. I remember there was a pond on West LA, had the mallard ducks on it. Okay. And they filled that thing in and made it a baseball diamond.
Yes.
We love the children. Okay. But I kind of liked that pond.
A duck pond is nice.
Pond, yeah.
Yes.
We could go there and just sit. It had a kind of a Japanese type feel to it.
Which was the Japanese garden that was left after the duck pond.
Exactly.
Which is now gone.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things, a lot of clinical modalities and things that they have to help veterans, and I'm all for that. But sometimes it's just the simplest things that are a real benefit. And I don't want to turn to I remember when, but it used to be a building back there that every game in the world was in that building. It was back toward where you remember where the old post office was?
Yeah.
Okay, it was the old post office, and you had the cafeteria, and then you came on up the drive. It was a row of buildings that was up there, and one of them was so intriguing because it just had every game in the world to me was there, and you just don't see those kind of therapies. Everything has to be kind of high tech and that kind of thing. Okay, so now you all meet every Sunday to talk about the fact that the land is not being used as intended. Okay.
Well, what we really do, because we stand out in that corner with our signs, a message to the general public so that they understand. And it's interesting. We build up a big following. They honk their horns and, they give you the fist bump and everything else. But we want that message to go into the general public.
Okay.
But interesting, in 10 years of being out there, not once has the LA Times, any news thing, covered it. Not one. And we're peaceful demonstrators. And, there's been a lot that's happened out there. As Dave knows, we put up an American flag and get arrested.
Yeah.
Get handcuffed.
Here's one thing we know with social media. One thing about social media, you're going to be able to draw attention in ways where you don't have to be dependent on certain institutions. The important thing is this. War and service requires a unique person because you have to be commendable. That's the bottom line. If you're not commendable, service is not for you. Somebody's going to give you an order, and I laugh all the time. In the Corps, I was stationed mainly at the National Security Agency. They have a Marine contingent on that Fort Meade base. And it was three things that was common. I never liked the order. I never liked the person that gave the order. And I never liked where they was going to send me for the order. But I had to follow those commands. And I took those commands seriously. Okay. The importance is that what is being done here is to help those persons who are commendable, who said that I will go, I will serve, I will stand in defense of this nation, both foreign and domestic. Now, you can say that sounds a little hokey or whatever it is. It makes no difference to me. But I'm telling you that the service that is done by the military is vital to the continued liberty of this nation. And they deserve that when something is put forth to them, just because somebody changes in time and say that, oh, a condo will look better here or something else will look better here, they should not have the ability to change that. There's a park up at National, what is that street up there? The Wilshire, right across from the Armory.
Federal. Veterans Avenue. Veterans Avenue?
Federal
Avenue.
Yeah.
Or Federal Boulevard, yeah.
Okay. And you remember a long time ago, veterans used to come from all over the country and just camp out at that park. And that was the argument then. That land, too, used to be a part of that acreage. And they said, well, it's the veterans' land, and it belongs to them. And they said, well, we don't want veterans sleeping there. And now it's like a 10-foot, 12-foot iron fence around their property.
Yeah, that front area right where we rally, they designate it as a national park, Veterans Park. It's open to the public. People bring dogs and everything else. But we got photos where veterans are, one in particular, a veteran rode in on his bicycle and was sitting under the tree, and next thing the VA police escorting him out.
Yeah.
So
you've got to get involved somewhere along the line. People are going to just have to, just continue to do service, be a part of something. Take a stand somewhere. I mean, if that's not something that's of interest to you, call Mr. Coleman up. Now, give us a number. I'm going to be asking both of you from time to time during the interview to give your contact information. So
well, I'm not going to do that because I give out my phone number to my American Legion post.
That's good.
For veterans who call the post who are in need of Veterans Administration benefits.
Okay.
And as a result of that, it's my cell phone, and so I don't feel comfortable giving my phone number at large since I don't have an office. I don't have any place that I work certain hours. This is on my own time and in my own doing and my own keeping. Mm-hmm. So I prefer not to give out my phone number. Mm-hmm. And when veterans do contact me through various means, I am there to assist them.
Okay. So what means can they contact you through?
Well, they can contact the American Legion Post in Culver City.
Okay.
Post 46, Community Post 46, and ask whoever answers the phone, which is usually going to be the bartender, I would need some help on my VA benefits.
Okay.
And they will get my phone number.
Okay.
And they'll call me at their discretion, and we talk.
Okay. Now, is there a public number for American Legion Post 46?
No, you got to look it up. got to dig it out off your telephone or get the operator to give it to you or look in a phone book for the phone number.
Okay. All right. Okay, so now talk to us about when they do get to you. What are some of the services when it comes to veterans benefits that you do provide?
Oftentimes, veterans have applied for Veterans Administration benefits, usually compensation. And briefly, the difference in compensation and pension is that compensation is a benefit payment made by the VA for illness, accident, or injury sustained during active duty. That's compensation. Think of the word compensation. They're compensating you for getting hurt or injured on the job. If you work for Xerox or the airlines and a mishap happened and you injured your leg so you couldn't work anymore, that company would pay you money because you were injured on the job, and they would compensate you. So it's the same thing. It's a way of recognizing the word compensation as how it applies to benefits. The other is a pension, and pension is totally different in that you have no in-service injury or accident or illness. You are simply old and infirmed, and your income is a large factor in receiving pension. You cannot have an income exceeding the poverty level and receive a pension from the Veterans Administration. But most of the people ain't going to be applying for pension, so let's stay with compensation.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's dig into that a little bit, because I'm 100%, and then there's some other things associated with it now. But when I had to close my company, eventually they gave me a pension.
Right.
Because back then they had not rated me service-connected, and the doctors rated me permanently and totally disabled.
Well, I don't understand when you closed your company and you're now talking about being rated by the VA. I don't understand how the two meet. When you closed your company, you mean in the military or private?
No, Dave, I'm just trying to have a conversation here.
I am too. I'm trying to be as helpful as I can.
Okay. We sometimes run into veterans who don't know that they can file for a pension if a doctor rates them.
You use the word compensation because pension is misleading. You must be 65 or older in order to receive compensation, or permanently and totally disabled without having been injured in the service. So let's stay away from the word pension. Most veterans are not going to be applying for pension, so use the word compensation.
Dave?
Yes.
We're talking about two different things.
Okay.
Okay. But what we're going to do is we're going to continue to talk about it, because in certain communities, people get pensions put to them long before they get the compensation. And so when I run into some veterans who don't know and they're getting GR or something, and they have a chance to get a little bit more through a pension, it kind of helps them with their lives. But you have a point about the compensation, because it's totally different from the pension. What I'm trying to get to is in the compensation process, what are the most common mistakes that a veteran makes in filing for compensation?
Abandoning their claim. The paperwork is sometimes voluminous that veterans receive in the pursuit of filing a claim for compensation. Oftentimes, veterans, when they get the paperwork from the VA, on the initial reading of the documents from the VA, they're sometimes confusing and not immediately understandable. And many veterans will discard that and let it go and simply abandon the claim. I literally have seen veterans who applied for a claim, abandoned the claim, and 20 years later came back for that same disability and applied for compensation and received it from the Department of Veterans Affairs. One of the reasons back in the early days was veterans could be married and employed and busily doing other things, perhaps to earn a living. And they don't have a lot of time to go to all of the appointments that is requested and required by the Veterans Administration in the pursuit of a compensation claim. So when veterans miss appointments, it ends the process because the veteran didn't show for an appointment. So that's another way and means with which the claim is abandoned, in which case no further action is taken until the veteran resurfaces, comes in with another application or a letter saying, I want to reapply for my service-connected disability benefits.
Yeah,
and it goes
they have a number of ways that they use to discourage veterans. My claim took 14 years, but I did mine myself. Mine went all the way to the Veterans Courts of Appeal, and Judge Lyons remanded it back, and he remanded it in my favor. We have always talked about the fact that the system seems a little daunting.
It is, indeed.
Okay. And I take the position that we need more persons who can help veterans file the claim, because some of the stuff is just, in my opinion, just ridiculous. It wasn't just me. There were people filing for PTSD, and they were being denied. And all of the records, everything was there. And to be told that you're filing for PTSD on the wrong form. There were two forms. I think they have streamlined it now, but at one time there was two forms for PTSD. One was combat and one was civilian. And if you filed on one, the other, it was just automatically denied. So I think that there's some things that on the VA side that they definitely could do better. I've, as a county commissioner and a state senior senator for the state of California, I'm interacting a lot with different things, both from the veterans and both from the VA side. It does seem to like it's getting better on the VA side. It's not like it was when I came out in the 70s. But there's still a lot of work to do because a lot of veterans are dying and not getting their benefit.
Well, let me, if I may, go back to the application and the form, the two forms you mentioned. Mm-hmm. The form used for compensation to the Veterans Administration is a dual form. After the third or fourth page, it says, if you are applying for a pension, continue filling this out through the next 6 pages. And in the absence of scrutinizing what you're filling out, what you're filing, what you're looking for, veterans fill that out, and it becomes a form in which they're applying for 2 benefits. And so the second benefit is they're not going to apply, mm-hmm. You see. They're not going to be able to receive that benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And
all right. We have a caller on the line, and we're going to take this call and see what the caller is talking about. So put your headsets on, fellas. Caller, you're on the line. This is the Raymond Hall Show. Raymond Hall speaking.
Hello, Raymond Hall. This is Ted Hayes, man.
Hey, Ted, how you doing, young man?
I was sitting up here watching y'all.
I'm here with
yeah, those my homeboys, man.
Yeah, your cohorts here. Okay.
Apart from you, those are the 2 of the greatest veterans you're ever gonna meet, man.
Okay.
And that one cat sitting there to your left, right, that's Bob Rosebrock, legendary.
Okay.
This is the cat that's out there every Sunday, no matter what. And the other dude sitting over to your left, that's my Marine.
Mm-hmm.
That's my
right.
former man, and he's a wonderful, wonderful man. I've known these guys for several years and pay close attention. And I would propose to you because, you were saying some things there, Dave, that I didn't quite know before. And I think there's a lot of veterans out here who don't really know the route, and they give up too fast.
Right.
Well, I would like to inject one thing, because you're absolutely right when they kind of give up. But that's, again, it goes back to the VA. There's an old saying, delay, 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 deny, deny, deny until you die. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what they hope to do, is to drag you on so you either give up or you die. And that's sad, but that is
that's the nail. You're hitting the nail on the head. When you look at especially Vietnam, when you look at the legitimate claims at the proper rating, you would see that cost is enormous. So if you take 100% and deny it for 10 years, you're going to see how much money you save with just one veteran. Now, if you roll that over times 1,000 times, then you're going to see how much money you're saving the nation. So this is not personal. My booklet is called Personal Process in Purple Pajamas. Personal, we go in and, hey, VA, this is what happened to me. It's personal to us. This is what happened to us. And the VA said, we're the second largest government department it is. We don't deal in personal. Okay? And then the VA says, well, we deal in process. And we're saying process. Okay? So we've got to move from our personal, not disregarding it, but put it inside of their process. Now, the purple pajamas is anybody that's been sick for a long time and been in the hospital for a long time. The pajamas aren't purple. They're actually maroon. But for the sake of the title of the pamphlet, I just called them purple pajamas, the 3 Ps. The people who work, a lot of the people who worked in the VA at one time had totally disdain for veterans. They act like they knew more, that they just had no respect for the veteran.
Right.
And what happens is you walk around with this purple pajama syndrome. I know more than you. I'm the doctor. I'm the nurse. Get in the bed, shut up, lay down, and if you say something I don't like, I'm going to put it in a folder somewhere, and that's going to be the end of you.
Wow.
Okay. That's the purple pajama process. And anybody that knows my story knows it's true. I still have the letter from where they said in February 2000, Mr. Hall is too sick, too confused. He'll never handle a heart transplant. That was February of 2000. This is July of 2018, 18 years later. Okay? So this is not something that... I'm not the only one that have those kind of documents that the VA wrote. But how do you get involved? You get involved. You don't shake your fist at it. You say, I'm going to get involved, like you do. You stand your post, like you do. You teach and you help people to fill out those claims. So what we're doing here is we're saying to the listening and viewing public, you got to get involved. You got to have some service with yourself.
That's right.
Okay? You've got to, and is service easy? No, of course not. Sometimes service is going to cost you your life. But if you give your life for service, that means somebody else is going to have the opportunity to live.
That's right.
And that's what these two gentlemen to my left and to my right are talking to you about.
That's right.
Service is the one thing that's going to spell out your life that's going to remain. Your dollars ain't going to remain. Your car ain't going to remain. Your folk that you love, no. But that service you put in is going to be like that headstone or that marker that you're given at the end of this life that's going to remain of you.
That's right.
Ted, I thank you so very much, my friend. And, you always got my attention because I'm always there with you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we'll be talking again sometime soon.
Thank you for your service, gentlemen.
Thank you for your service.
You.
Have a good day. Okay. So you were talking about that you they have to reach out to you through the American Legion. Okay. So what are some of the most often things that you have people do?
The most what?
The most often things. What are some of the frequent things that you...
Well, I think the most often thing that I have people do is get the last correspondence they received from the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Okay.
And I tell them to read it sometimes on the phone and sometimes to read it over. And I tell them several times, and I make them understand that each time you read it, you will glean more information of what the Veterans Administration is saying to you. And veterans have told me time and time again, after they read it a third time and a fourth time, they got to understand what the VA was saying, and then they could be in compliance.
That's true.
So a large part of it is to understand. People will say, the VA says, I owe them money. And why do you owe them money? I don't know. What did the letter say? I'm not sure. Get the letter, read the letter, and it will tell you why the Veterans Administration says you have an overpayment, how it was created, and what to do to resolve it. So that's the large part of what I do. For initial claims, it's simply a matter of getting the necessary documentation, which is usually your discharge papers, your DD-214, and the application, and fill it out. And again, reading the application over carefully. We were saying before the call that the application for filing for compensation is a two-part form, as you mentioned earlier. The second part of the form is pension, and most veterans are not entitled to pension. So the first part is the compensation, but in not reading the form and the headings of the categories, they fill out the pension part, and that's the part the VA processes, and they come back and say, you're not eligible for pension. You make too much money. Even on unemployment, that's too much money to receive a pension. So the veteran feels that he's denied. But the VA denied the wrong thing because he filled out the wrong thing on the application because you didn't read the heading that says, if you are applying for pension, fill out page 3, 4, and 5. And they do, without having noted they're not supposed to fill out page 3, 4, and 5 because they're applying for compensation, which is the first 1, 2, and 3. So,
okay. Well, sometimes compensation gets a little complicated. It's not as easy as. Let me put it like this: if you have a obvious disability, a well-documented disability, then they simply look at your claim and go back and look at your file, and they say, okay, let's make the connections. First, we see it documented in his active service, okay. Second, it's something that's continuing today. That's the service connection. Now let's talk about the degree of disability.
Correct.
That's a whole different desk that it goes to. And they do those things like that. But what happens when your disability is not something that's that straightforward? Because they only learn about what's going on years later.
Let me give you an example of that. MST, military sexual trauma, which is what female veterans have experienced since day one. Oftentimes, women who are abused, sexually abused in the service, do not report the event or the occasion during their military service. And when they leave the service, and we're not talking about any time frame, but when you leave the service after being traumatized, there's an event and an effect on your mind and your brain. And even though there is no evidence of record during the military service, female veterans have been eligible to receive and do receive compensation for military sexual trauma, MST, even though there's no record in there, no documentation in their record of that happening. So the Therapeutic Alliance and Environment can determine that through examination and continued counseling and therapy that there is a condition that exists, which is a traumatization, which could be PTSD or something else. But it's detectable by psychiatrists. And subsequently, people are awarded compensation when there is no evidence in their record during their service. So I just wanted to say that's possible.
Yeah. I was very happy to see the women's clinic when they fully funded and supported the women's clinic, because at one time, part of my area of responsibility was to support various veterans organizations, and one of them was the women's group and that kind of thing. And it was just hard for me, a man, to sit in some of those meetings while some of the things were being discussed that they endured. So I was fully very happy to see them with open up the things that they open up for the persons that are traumatized. And that, and the Lejeune thing with the water. There was things that they recognized with persons like myself and other people coming out of certain situations that had direct effect on health that they didn't know about then. But today, through modern medicine and stuff, they know about it. And so that's what we want to do. I want to go back to something that you were talking about, too, because you were talking about the things that happen outside. One of the things that's a challenge, too, is how much research goes on inside of that hospital. Now, we're talking about West L.A. I don't know what goes on in other ones, but one of the things that caught my attention, it's a beautiful thing to be commendable. We all soldiers, we were given commands. But when they want to look at new medicines and everything, it was so much research going on in that hospital. And I think sometimes to ask a sick man to participate in research is like undue stress.
I think you're getting to experimentation.
Yeah.
Medical experimentation. I think that's where you're going with this.
Yeah.
I think that's where you're going with this. Yes. There's a thing they call the Thorazine shuffle.
Yes.
And,
I just wanted to inject some, because you're absolutely right on that. Yeah. And when I encounter homeless veterans and I talk to them and try to see about getting them inside, and they don't want to go in the VA, and there's a special reason. They put them on medication. Everybody wants to say these veterans are all drunks and alcoholics. Now, there are elements in the homeless community. I've found that many of the homeless veterans are survivors, good people, but they don't want to go inside the VA and get on medication, because the first thing they want to do is just sedate them and everything else.
Right.
They don't want them. Now, there's a veteran, 180% veteran, Marine, Vietnam. And I got to know him very well. And that's just somebody I totally admired, living on the streets. He had PTSD. He was bipolar. He had depression and everything you could possibly imagine. And he went around picking up bottles and cans to survive. Now, he's 180% disabled. He had a disability there, but the catch-22, he was homeless, didn't have an address, so they couldn't mail it to him. Now, I had photos of him when he's living in an alley with a shopping cart, and there were 18 different medications they had for him. I took photos, had the sheet on there, and it says, take 2 of these every hour on an empty stomach, take 1 of these every 4 hours on a full stomach. It was I call it bottled death. It was a prescription. I mean, that to me is a form of genocide, veteran genocide. They were trying to get rid of him, but George was one thing. You Marines will appreciate this. George was just such an outstanding person. And I said to him, George, you're a real soldier. He locked his heels and he said, I'm a Marine. And that's why I say they don't forget. There's even though they're in the midst of all of that, there's an inner core. Right. There's still a Marine. There's still there's that pride. Yeah. And I just think there's so much more that can be done for veterans. You go back to when they were there at the old home. And the Grand Army, they was like a military. They had squads and everything else. They looked out for each other.
Right.
Now you've got these case managers and never served, wouldn't know which end of a rifle to hold.
Right. Well, that was my point about the attitude that was is just outrageous with some. Now I have to be completely fair to the VA. Two of my very best friends are nurses that I met when I first got sick. We've been friends for years. Excuse me. I'm in and out of that hospital in Long Beach, and that hospital is completely different today than the delivery of service model that they had years ago.
Correct.
And I commend that, because these young people, at a point when we were first coming home, then, we didn't understand. Now we're the people that understand. And we've got to take what we understand and help these young people that are just coming home. Because, they feel that don't nobody understand what they've gone through. And we have to respect that, okay? We have to just respect that and help them as much as we can, because it gives them the strength and the longevity to be able to get through it and get to where they can help someone else, okay? Because that's where the help is going to come from, when we help each other. Like
it is. Veterans helping veterans. I
totally exactly.
Agree. They understand, and they will, like you said, they'll take a command, because you do in the military.
Right.
Suddenly you have a civilian who is clueless giving you commands, and there's a resistance there. There's no doubt. It's a human factor. And going back to the nurses now, listen, left to their own, they would be outstanding. But again, they're taking orders, and you can't do this, you can't do that. Because I think, again, that service as a nurse and a doctor is commendable. If they could do it, in their profession and not with the bureaucracy of the VA. I've always had kind of this vision of building a new home somewhere out, way out, and getting retired doctors who are veterans and whatnot just to serve and to help. And I think you'd see wonders of difference in it. But as long as you've got politics, government bureaucracy, it's never going to succeed the way we would like it to succeed, or it should succeed.
Well, excuse me. I think that politicians make decisions when it comes to war and don't look further down the line. We've got another caller coming in. Put your sets on, fella. Good afternoon. You're on the Raymond Hall Show. This is Raymond Hall. Hello? Caller, are you there? I guess we lost the caller. Hello? Okay. So we've lost the caller, hung up. But sometimes politicians don't think through the true cost. The Pentagon did a paper. It was kind of silly when I first heard it, that the Defense Department and the Pentagon was at odds over the true cost of war to human beings. And they said that war was harmful to human beings. And, you sit there and you look at that. You're just finding that out. How much money did you spend?
Well, Smedley Butler, who was a Marine in 1930, after the First World War, said war is big business. And he wrote a book about that, about the business that is realized when there is a war.
A racket.
It's a racket. It's a racket. It's clearly a racket.
Yeah. Because you'll find, as he found, he was a 2-time recipient of the Medal of Honor.
Correct.
And he was a general.
Yes.
And he went out to these places, and he found himself in places, VA homes, or in the Midwest, where farm boys around. And he realized, he said, this is the backbone of our military.
Exactly.
It's not the sons and daughters of those who are benefiting at the profit of war.
Right.
And he changed completely. A very commendable man.
Yes.
And I'd like to see a lot of his
doctrine and
resurrected.
Right.
And I would like to inject one thing is that I really believe that the VA should be merged back into the Department of Defense. General Powell says, you break it, you own it. And he was talking about going to war. Well,
right.
But I think that when we allocate money to go to war and say, for every dollar they're going to spend on fighting it, they better put back another dollar to defend those that fight.
Right.
And I think that when, for instance, like Marines, there's a real camaraderie there. But as you mentioned, you're just a face when you go in there. If you're in that, you're this lonesome person goes in. They treat you like a vet, not a veteran. And but if you were the Marines took care of Marines and down the line, I think we'd see a different picture completely.
Well, I hear what you're saying about defense and that kind of thing. I heard a young man tell me one day, I'm a staff sergeant. Call me Sarge. I didn't say nothing. I just went on about my business. Okay. And when he saw me in another element, he said something. Oh, I remember you and this and that, but you didn't comment. I said, yeah, because you wanted me to call you Sarge. You're not a sergeant. You're a veteran. There's no sergeant veteran. There's no captain veteran. There's no Louis veteran. We're just all veterans. And when you talk about the Department of Defense, you're talking about a structured system where rank is required. You have to have that rank and that authority in order to be able to command battalions and troops and brigades and all of those kind of things. Veteran is where we talk about, you look at that discharge and you see you were honorably discharged from active military service. We've never been discharged from service. So now we put on the uniform, whatever that uniform looks like. Let me put on a uniform of neighbor, uniform of brother, uniform of cousin, uniform of crossing guard, whatever it is. But you put on a different kind of uniform, but you continue to serve. Okay? And I think that's a unique thing when it comes to veterans. I want to say this to all of my fellow vets all over the place. And I want to commend both Bob and Dave because they're still putting work in. And they're putting work in that helps you. Maybe something that was said that will spark your interest for you to get involved in some of the things they're doing or think about something you're doing. But this is to all of those vets and to especially to the active service. Thank you for serving. Some of the people don't understand it. They just get up and go to the store and keep getting their lollipops and they buds. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Okay, go get your Budweiser or whatever. I mean, I'm not a drinking person, whatever folks drinking now. But you're able to do that because people serving. I'm not going to bite into this local thing about politics and parties and all of that kind of thing, but I'm going to tell you something. It's a lot of people don't like America just because America is America. Because you do have liberties to go and do the things that you want to do. It's a lot of people who want to take a bite out of this nation just because this nation is what it is. It stands. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But the three of us are sitting here at this table and we're talking to you from a consensus that service is the key. Don't tear up your own house. So for all of those persons that are serving around the world, we thank you. For all of those persons that have served around the world, we are grateful. We are coming up on the last few minutes of the Raymond Hall Show for this week, and do you have a contact number?
Yeah,
okay.
They can call me, and say what do they want. And
Okay.
I've been called everything before, so there's nothing new.
Nothing but a child of God, huh?
Yeah, but they can call me. My cell is 310-490-6495. Again, 310-490-6495. Or you can call me. It's at RROSEBROCK, the number 1 at AOL.com. Again, RROSEBROCK, number 1 at AOL.com. And, glad to hear from you and see if we can help or each other. And I want to thank Raymond for inviting us on. And in following up what you were saying about service, I have had a good honor of driving for the Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army Hawaii, Colonel Willems, great influence, an incredible human being and soldier, everything. And he wanted me to go to officer school after my 2-year duty as a draftee. And I said, well, no, I think I'm at the top. I want to go out here. Well, you got my face. He said, let me remind you. He said, a soldier's duty is never done.
That's correct.
And that's something that echoes all the time, and
yes.
I appreciate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's never done.
Okay. And
I can relate to service. Heretofore, I never made that connection, but GIs are service and serving people.
Yes.
In uniform or out.
Yes.
And there's definitely a correlation between people who have former military background and experience as service people or servers as opposed to those who have never been in the military.
Right. Well, we are absolutely grateful to have such a distinguished gentleman on our show today, and we hope that you take to heart the things that they have said. Now, they can also join you Sundays 1 to 4.
1 to 4 at northeast corner of San Vicente Boulevards in Wilshire. Now, that's in Brentwood, west of the 405 freeway. There's 2 Wilshire and San Vicente. One's over in Beverly Hills. But this is in the west of the 405, right adjacent to Brentwood, community of Brentwood.
Okay. This broadcast is local, but it streams. That means that it has the opportunity for you to pick it up anywhere around the world. So while we're talking about issues that may be local and the service may be local, wherever you are, that's where you can put that service in that helps your community. Today we want to recognize someone that I called Dad for a long time. We've extended a senior salute. A senior salute is our actual arm where we actually give you a face of service. If you want to do a senior salute in your community, just go to our webpage, aseniosalute.com, and you'll see all of the contact information there. That's where those veterans who served the nation honorably and continued in service in their community, volunteer service, that is, that you, the community to where that service was given, can choose to do a senior salute, and we'll come in and do that. This is to someone who I called Dad for a long time. His name is Mr. Joseph McCombs. Mr. Joseph McCombs passed on some years ago, and I began to think about all of the service that he provided the nation as an active service person, started a company, raised sons, and his wife and himself has a construction company that continues today. So, Mr. Joseph McCombs, this senior salute is for you. For your active service to the nation, we thank you. For your dedicated service to your community, we bestow on you this day a senior salute. We, the community who are benefactors of your service, we recognize the value of your service, and we will use that service as a light that shines a light for us on our path, that we too may give service. This is Raymond Hall, the host of the Raymond Hall Show. Have some service in your life. Thank God for each and every one of you. We'll see you here next week at the Raymond Hall Show. Have a good day.